Stark. Hello, sleepyheads. Today I'm finally going to tell you the story of the day I spent about a week ago with a parrot. So I'm going to get right into it, but first I want to show you my nails because I got them done yesterday and I finally have them the way that I like them, the shape that I like them. They're kind of lavender, if you can't tell, and it feels so nice. I know it's such a silly little thing, but I really feel like myself for the first time in a long time. It's funny how a little thing can raise your spirits, but that's what happened for me with my nails. I have a little light on me right now, like a little sunset light, because it's a super gloomy, overcast day here, so can't rely on much light from my windows, and so the lighting was a little funky. So that's what I'm doing just to keep things kind of warm and toasty here for our little story time. Okay, so the story of the parrot. So, 2 weeks ago today, so I misspoke earlier when I said it was last week because it was actually 2 weeks ago today. I had just taken a shower and I was in my robe, walking around my apartment, I don't know, doing this and that, like I think I had gotten my vitamin C serum out of the fridge, and I was just standing in the living room. And I heard a shrieking sound, like a squawking, shrieking combo. It's a very particular sound. I didn't have my contacts in, so I really could only see shapes past a certain distance from me. But I saw a movement outside my window accompanying this squawk. So, like, I knew where the sound was coming from, and I could also see some sort of commotion. This may sound a little bizarre, this may sound par for the course. I don't know what your levels of experience are with, like, parrots, with exotic birds, but something about the flash of color and the particular squawk, I just knew it was a parrot. In particular, I knew it was a conure. I had birds growing up. I had lots of animals. We always talked about the menagerie. We had a menagerie of animals, right? So, rats and mice and hamsters and guinea pigs and horses and dogs. Just one dog, really, but lots of cats and fish and birds, lots of birds. So the birds we had included cockatiels, lots of cockatiels. Like, we inadvertently bred cockatiels. Like, it started as an accident, but until we could get the birds sexed, we just kind of leaned into it. Like, that means, like, until we could figure out which birds were male and which were female. This is a whole other story for a whole other day, but we ended up breeding cockatiels for a while, which is not something I'd do now because I think the world has enough pets and the emphasis should be on adoption. So yes, we had cockatiels, and we also had a cockatoo. You know, they're very big and crested. They really look like what you'd picture when someone says a parrot. I mean, maybe a little less colorful. You know, they don't have that kind of So yeah, I saw a little flurry of color and something drop onto the lower wall. And it was right outside our windows. So it was right outside our big front window. But I couldn't see anything. I could just see color and hear that squawk. If you have any experience whatsoever with them, they're pretty easy to pick out, like I wasn't the seed go through their entire system, but without getting broken up, because obviously birds don't have teeth, don't have molars, don't have an ability to kind of grind their food. So a lot of plants evolved to have this, I don't know, this mechanism to cause pain or discomfort to certain animals to discourage them from eating their seeds. Because, you know, they wanted to be propagated by animals, but they didn't want to have the seeds destroyed in the process, if that makes sense. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm getting super off track. What else is new? But, we got to just spend some time with this bird, and he was so sweet. Like, we kept referring to him as a little gentleman. So eventually we just started calling him Petey. And he was so sweet, so cuddly, like he was just falling asleep. If you don't know, like certain birds, especially if they're hand raised, they can be so affectionate. Like conures can sometimes go on their backs, like you can rub their bellies. It's so cute. They can just cuddle up inside your hands. And so at times I was holding him and he was falling asleep in my hands, like with his head burrowed, because they can rotate their heads pretty much 180 degrees. So he would rotate his little head so that he was kind of hidden away in my hand. The person with whom I live, he was like preening their cuticles, and they were kind of freaked out by that at first. But birds, it's just an affectionate thing. Like they fixate on the not right thing or the different thing, and they try to fix it. So yeah, by the time we set out for the pet store, they had bonded quite a bit. You know, we had tried to give Petey some raw cashews, but he wasn't interested. But while I was getting ready, the person with whom I live was able to get him to eat some banana and drink some water. It's funny because they were just eating a banana themselves, and then Petey got super interested, you know, perked up and kind of demanded some, essentially. So that was super cute. Yeah, so we didn't know what to do with Petey while we were at the pet store. There was one just like a half-mile away, which was lucky, but we didn't want to leave him alone out and about. So we actually stuck him on a towel rack in our bathroom. I don't know, we just didn't feel like we had a lot of good options, and we thought at least he can grip this. We moved the towel to the side and we just put him on the towel rack because it was about the right size for his little feet. You know, the shower curtain rod would have been too big. Plus he had the high vantage point, so we figured as a bird that would make him comfortable. And we were also like, you know, how much trouble can he get into in the bathroom? We were nervous about the mirrors and the window because we couldn't tell if he was fully flighted or if he had clipped wings. So we went off to the pet store and immediately blew $200 because if you're gonna have a bird overnight, you're gonna need to put them in a cage, and that alone costs over $100 to get a conure cage. So we got a conure cage and a few perches, and of course some pellets, like some food, and a couple toys, and some nail clippers because his nails were all grown out. So, oh, and I forgot to mention, first of all, his coloring. I'll just do an insert so you'll see what he looked like, but beautiful green feathers, very colorful plumage with some red on his chest and some yellow. So he definitely looked like a green-cheeked conure. My sister was like maybe a pineapple conure. I don't know, I stopped looking after green-cheeked conure because that's what we had growing up, and he looked so similar. And beyond just how he behaved, you know, he behaved very much like a hand-raised bird, like someone's pet, and he knew immediately to hop up on me. I mean, again, that could have been because he was scared of the hawk and I was the better option, but he just seemed like somebody's pet. But he also had a band around his ankle, was grooming his tail feathers that had gotten kind of monkey at some point. So yeah, he started to seem a lot more comfortable. And from the length of his nails and how hungry he was, we inferred that he'd been out for at least a few days, maybe even a week or so. It depends on how often his owner was cutting his nails, but they were pretty grown out. And once we got his cage set up, you could so tell he'd had one before because he was so comfortable. He knew how to use everything. He was so excited to have access to food on like a reliable basis again. So he was just eating and drinking and making a mess and having so much fun. And he was pretty needy the whole first night that we had him. He wanted a lot of cuddles. He chirped and got agitated if we were watching TV, and he wasn't allowed to be out with us. Sorry for the plane. Now that all changed after one night. Birds need about 12 hours of sleep, so we covered him up and actually put his cage here because he was being a little noisy. We had him near the front door, and we were just worried our neighbors would hear him, whereas in this room, there's the kitchen on one side and the bathroom and the hallway on the other, so it's kind of insulated. It's set apart from our neighbors' walls. There's a no pet policy in our apartment complex, so we didn't want to be disruptive to neighbors, and we just put him in here. You can't put birds in your kitchen because they have very sensitive lungs, like think of canaries and mines. So they're very sensitive to fumes, and a lot of things are toxic for them that in certain quantities aren't toxic for us. So when you're cooking or when you're cleaning in your kitchen, especially just stovetop fumes, that can hurt or even kill your bird. So couldn't have him in there, couldn't have him in the living room. Put him up on my dresser and covered him up, and he got a good night's sleep. Now, the next morning, he was definitely up before we were, but he wasn't squawking. He wasn't making a fuss, which was really nice. We just kept calling him the little gentleman. He wasn't trying to wake us up, and some birds do that. I mean, I guess it was too soon to tell, but he definitely liked us and liked attention from us and knew we were in the room, but he didn't try to wake us up, which was nice. So given that he was such a lovely bird, of course we started contemplating, like, can we make this work long term? Can we have a bird? All the while, of course, we were searching Facebook and Craigslist and different registries, trying to find his original owner, because I'm sure if he does have an owner, he's very missed. I say that knowing that there is a possibility he was let loose on purpose. Parrots do get loose, and it's very sad when they do, but as it comes to birds, I think there are generally two types of pet owners, especially with parrots. There are those that adore their parrots, like they're their children, see them really as most people see like their dogs, right? Real bird people. And for those people, even though conures are a commodity and they're expensive, like if they're looking for their bird, they're looking for their bird. They're not gonna settle, like just as if you lost your dog and someone was like, oh well, I have this other dog, you wouldn't be interested, you want your companion back. So there were tons of people online looking for their lost parrots, and I was searching all those sites and looking around my neighborhood for physical flyers. And even birds with clipped wings can travel pretty far. They can get pretty far. So I was searching in a pretty large radius. And that said, there is the second type of person who maybe doesn't understand what they're getting into, and they get an exotic pet like a parrot. Especially with birds, I think people have this idea that it's like Snow White. They'll perch on your finger and they'll be really docile and sweet, and that's about it. And you can throw them in their cage for hours on end and they're fine. No. Conures, especially parrots, are very needy. Like, it's great to get them a companion, but if you've developed a bond with a parrot, they're going to need and want a lot of attention. Attention from survival skills, or very few survival skills. So Petey is brightly colored. Petey is out in the world. He doesn't have a flock. He's just on his own because there are no wild parrots exactly where I am in my neighborhood. So clearly he was out on his own. And so he didn't have power in numbers. He didn't have companions. And he was, again, not native to here. So he's got this bright plumage, and he stands out like a sore thumb, like for a hawk. They see so well as it is. I mean, Petey didn't have a chance, right? So I think that's sad. Like, Petey is not a wild bird. Petey is someone's pet. And you can just tell from his mannerisms. And yeah, he was about to be lunch. He was seconds away from being lunch when I found him. Like I was saying a while ago, we were definitely considering keeping Petey while we searched for an owner, and we were considering the possibility that whoever set him loose, whoever lost him, wasn't looking for him, didn't want him back. But also there is the possibility that someone very badly wanted him back. So we were definitely looking around, and I even reached out to a few people. It seemed like I might have found a match a couple times. And they gave me information. They asked for pictures, and the first one, someone was missing a conure named Optimus, and said that Petey didn't have a dent in his beak that Optimus did, and also Optimus didn't even have a footband, so that was always unlikely, but they confirmed that Petey wasn't their missing bird. And then another person was missing a bird named Pepe. He actually answered to a few names. He answered to Pepe, Pepa, and Pepio. And they were pretty sure that Petey wasn't their bird, just from pictures, but they said that Pepe spoke some Spanish. We tried out a few of the phrases that they gave us, like shut up in Spanish, just different things, because the great thing about birds is they'll pick up curse words really easily because, you know, we say them often and we say them emphatically, clearly. That was funny, the list of idioms, the list of curse words and little phrases to try out on Petey to ascertain that Petey was not, in fact, Pepe. So the search continued, and we were having such a lovely time with Petey, watching TV with Petey, and, you know, I had Petey on my shoulder while I did my ablutions and worked on some stuff on my computer that first night, and he would fuss with my earrings, and he actually broke my earring. Like, he bent the lightning bolt really badly, because it looks like a little toy, you know, and they like to get up in your hair and just groom you. So I actually had already replaced this set of earrings because they're my favorite, and I had damaged one of them in the first pair. So I had one damaged one from the first pair and one damaged one from the second pair. So I was able to get one complete pair between those two. So changed out for a new one. But yeah, he bent it with his beak. He also broke my nail, you know, my last manicure, the first one that I'd gotten in a long time. the smells of those animals. It's particularly hard for me to have an animal that poops inside, if that makes sense. Like, even a litter box, I don't think I could do at this point. It's all well and good if you have a ton of space and you can like put them in a well-ventilated mudroom or something like that. Because of course, the hope is that you're gonna have them out and about plenty, and you can actually potty train your bird so that they know to go to the bathroom in their cage. So it is possible. It's just like, it became an overwhelming prospect really quickly. Like, okay, so how are we gonna make this work and have the clean apartment that we want and the schedules that we want and be able to watch TV at night without keeping the bird up, and the bird has to sleep for 12 hours or else the bird gets cranky, and so on and so forth. So as much of a nice idea as it was, we just knew it wasn't going to work out long term. So that was sad, and it was Monday at this point, and we wanted to get PD checked for a microchip because, again, we were working super, super hard to try to reunite him with any owner he might have had. You know, I say that in the past tense, but actually the search continues, but more on that in a second. We took him to an exotic vet like 45 minutes away, and that was pretty difficult because we didn't have a carrier. You know, we'd already spent $200 on little odds and ends, but we didn't get a carrier. So we actually used Apple, which on day 2 we realized PD adores, and we got PD into a little cardboard box that we poked a bunch of holes into. And again, it was just a case of PD being such a sweet bird because it was hard to get him into the box without, you know, traumatizing him. You don't want to just shove an animal into somewhere they don't want to go. And we did want, you know, it's traumatizing enough for a bird to be lost or set loose, to change owners so many times. And knowing that we were, you know, at best just a foster, even if it took 2 or 3 weeks, like, we were okay with having PD as long as it took to find him a good home. What I didn't want to do was give PD just let her keep it. It was actually the person with whom I live's idea to just donate it, pay it forward for Petey in his new situation. So we let Kim know that, we're still looking for Petey's owner. And she was totally on board with that. She was like, I'll give him a good home in the meantime. And definitely, yes, like, she's a vet. She has the ethics of a vet. Like, she wants to reunite owners with their pets. So, they had Petey in an incubator, and they were like, do you want to take Petey back home with you and, like, think about this a little bit? But we didn't want to put Petey through that again. And, even though he was really good on the car ride, really sweet, if he was already comfortable, we just wanted him to stay where he was happy. Apparently, they'd connected very quickly, when Petey was out for the microchip scan. He'd stepped up on her hand and, done all the little sweet things that won us over in the first place. So it was really hard for me. I was sad to not have a chance to say goodbye, because through various other circumstances in my life, I've lost a lot of pets, and I'm definitely the sort of person that would want to have an animal in my life until either the end of my life or the end of theirs, whichever comes first. But it's been a long time since I've been able to have that. So, yeah, it was hard. It just reminded me of how much I love animals and how I really do want that in my life someday. I want a living situation that's conducive, and I want to be able to rescue animals. I love nothing more than stepping in to help an animal, to save an animal's life, and so that was a really gratifying experience to have. So I try to stay positive about the fact that we helped Petey. I thought we'd be stuck with him for a little longer, and I was kind of looking forward to that, as intimidating as the chaos of it all was. I was already looking things up and reacquainting myself with the ins and outs of bird ownership, and so I did have a good cry, when we went back home and I cleaned out his cage and got it all ready to take back to Kim before they closed that day. So we were running all around, and yeah, it was, even then, when we went back, because of COVID restrictions, we couldn't go in to say goodbye to him, so I definitely thought we'd get just a little more time. Like, I don't really have any pictures of me with Petey. I just have pictures of him, like, on my shoulder. Yeah, so I had a good cry, or 3, that night, and we'll never forget Petey. Kim's been nice enough to send me some photos, like, within reason. She shouldn't have to give updates week after week. She should be allowed to just, bond with them and move on with her life. But I do have her contact information, and I am continuing to look for Petey's rightful owner. And in the meantime, she has sent me some updates that, like, her family all loves Petey, and she's really, really connected with him. So, she sent me some pictures, and he seems happy, and that's really all you can ask for. So that worked out really nicely, and we were able to get back to our normal lives after just like 36 hours, and it was a really nice memory that I will carry with me for a long time. I'm sure I'm leaving things out, so if anything else occurs to me, I'll put it in my next general update video. Feel free to leave any questions if you have them, and I can answer those in a future video as well. So, thank you so much for watching and for listening to my silly parrot story. And I hope you get lots and lots of good REM sleep. And as always, I hope all your dreams are sweet. Bye.
Oh my. Oh my.
I saw this little flurry of color, and